There seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? We built a channel where we talk about those faces. Talking News with Debbie. Cassie Barnes has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Chattanooga and Little Valley both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She wasn't found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Hello everyone, welcome to Chasing a Murder, Talking News. Before we get started, please subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the notification bell. Today we are going ahead and getting started with Life Beyond the Grave, Part 26, the Lori Vallow case. We're moving in 2011, 2012, and we find out that there's a group attached to the Mormon Church called Preparing the People, and they have started to take interest in a media service attached to their group. Lori Vallow and Joseph Ryan are still having a go at the custody battle of Tylee Ryan. Chad Daybell, he and his wife Tammy, are starting to get more authors published through their book company, getting over this horrible recession, and things seem to be looking up for them. But on the other hand, Joseph Ryan still has a lot of struggles. It's December 14th, 2011. Lori sends out an email asking that Joseph be very particular with his visitation dates. Lori writes in an email, "Dear Mr. Ryan, due to the upcoming winter break, my client needs to know whether or not you plan to exercise your visitation December 26th or thereafter. Please let me know your plans on or before December 19th, 2011. If I do not hear from you, then I will assume that you do not plan to exercise visitation, and I will inform my client. Sincerely, Evans, Dove, and Nelson." So it does seem to me, with my research and understanding of Lori, that she's just trying to make things very, very difficult for Joe to get visitation. Lori also knows that he's struggling financially at this point. And remember that in 2007, we talked about Joseph Ryan being attacked by Alex Cox, Lori's brother, with a taser gun. Well, just recently, we find out that Alex Cox had an ex-wife by the name of Debbie. Debbie really didn't want to come forward. She didn't want to be on the news or anything like that, so I'm going to do my best to respect her as I share this information. Debbie said that she and Alex were married in 1992, and then they were divorced by 1993. But after their divorce, Debbie says that she stayed in contact with Alex Cox, at least until around this time, where he goes to jail. Alex Cox serves 90 days and writes a few letters showing that he still has interest in finding Joseph Ryan. So let's learn a little bit of their background. We know that Alex Cox was a Mormon, but he did not practice this religion faithfully. And this is based on his ex-wife, who recently had an audio speaking with detectives involved with this case. And she says she was not a Mormon her entire life. But when she was married to Alex, she kind of accepted that. She even got baptized through the LDS. But in reality, they were Mormons, but they weren't in church every Sunday. Debbie was just 22 years old when she married Alex, who was 24 at the time. And they lived in Texas for a period of time. And around 1992, we know that Lori Vallow ran off with her high school sweetheart. She got married. A lot of people think this is so that she could pretty much experiment sexually. That's what we believe. But her father, her family, no one was happy about this. And Debbie goes on to say there was a time, though, where they had actually moved to Utah, and I'll go over why shortly. While living in Utah, Lori lived in an apartment complex nearby, and Debbie said that she noticed that Alex really was a very protective brother to his big sister and often talked about her being pretty hot. Debbie said that Alex would sexualize Lori quite a bit. During her testimony, it seemed as though Alex Cox was obsessed with his sister Lori about where she was going, who she was hanging out with. According to Debbie, when they lived in Texas, she and Alex, she had been wanting to go back to Utah, but this wasn't something he was going to let her do at the time. But then one day, suddenly, he returns home and says, you know what? Let's go ahead and move to Utah. She found out later it's because that Alex was accused of sleeping with a 15-year-old, and her father was looking for him. Debbie says that it seems like Alex was chasing after Lori a lot. They would go over and hang out at her parents' sometimes in California, and he says that Alex would act like a goofball by wrapping Lori's legs around his hips, then bouncing her up and down on his pelvis while making sexual noises. That wasn't all. She also claimed that he would grab at her breasts. Also, Debbie said that the whole family was kind of weird like this. They liked to joke around about sex, especially Lori and Alex's parents, Janice and Barry Cox. If you ever watched one of his comedy skits, you would see Alex Cox joke about his name and say that he was basically born with a porno name. And he would make sexual references out to his audience. Debbie says she really doesn't like these type of acts, and she kind of talks to him about it. They actually argue quite a bit about it. She thinks it's weird, but she says Alex thinks she's weird for thinking that that's weird. In fact, the weird behaviors in Alex Cox and Lori's family kind of took priority in their conversations at times. Although Debbie thinks this is a very, very strange behavior, she says she never really thought that Alex would ever sleep with his sister Lori. But during a few of their arguments, Debbie tries to make it clear to Alex how she feels about how they act sexual with one another. She asked Alex if he would be okay with their kids acting that way if they were to have children. But she says Alex really doesn't get that. She says that he doesn't get what the problem is and didn't understand why Debbie thought this was so weird. I can't help but wonder if Alex Cox really had his moments when he was alone and thought about what Debbie was pointing out as very, very, very strange since they had so many arguments about it. Debbie jumps back in time to a period of time where Lori got married. I believe that she's speaking about Jans, her high school sweetheart. Lori dropped everything for him, including their graduation event. She runs off with this guy to Las Vegas, and they get married. I remember seeing an interview with Janice Cox, Lori's mother, and she spoke about some of Lori's boyfriends or husbands that she says she really didn't support them. The whole family really didn't care for them. In fact, the only person that they really cared about was Charles Vallow, her current husband in this timeline. But Charles Vallow also paid their bills. But it's important to remember that Lori just kind of ran away with a guy her family didn't know, and her family really didn't feel supportive of. I noticed that Lori Vallow is very drawn to Sin City. During the time Lori's married to this guy. Debbie says that Alex is always talking about kicking this guy's ass, but she doesn't say why. And when Lori got back to California with her new husband, her father, Barry, insisted that Lori divorce this guy. You know, I have found Lori's first husband, and I reached out to him, but I really never got anything back. So he's probably wanting to pretend like this marriage never ever happened. He's probably even thankful that it went sour. But again, I don't know if you guys remember, because these podcasts, they're getting long. This story is huge. What we covered earlier, that we felt she mostly married this guy because she was having these hormones pretty much kicking her butt. That's speculation, of course. But according to Debbie, Alex is very bothered by the fact that Lori is or has eloped and married this guy. According to Deb, she says that Alex Cox continues to closely observe how the men treat Lori and everything going on with Lori and these guys. Basically how they treat her. And if they didn't treat her the way that he felt that she should be treated, he would always say he wants to kick their ass. And I thought about this. It must have been very obvious that Lori understood and knew, you know, her brother was so protective and would do anything to help her. I wonder if this is kind of contributes to her knowing that she could use this to help her little agendas. But it's interesting that Debbie says during this time where she's hearing Alex make all these threats, he seems all talk and no action. And let me tell you, things would change in a few more years for her. Debbie said back then Alex he just liked to talk tough. Debbie continues, by going back to around this time when Alex Cox has spent 90 days in jail for the attack of Joseph Ryan, and now he's getting out. Now, guys, I'm not being able to get the exact date that he gets out of jail, but it's around this time. She says she talks to Alex Cox. He tells her about the incident with Joe Ryan. Also tells her that he's been excommunicated, and this would be his second time. And I am very appreciative that Debbie come forward with this information that we are about to talk about. And we know her stance on the Cox family. She said that she's seen a lot of the crazy dynamics with the family through inappropriate sexual touching between Lori and Alex Cox, even with one another. But he didn't do this with Summer or Stacy. The only time that he has done this is mainly when he's at the family's house, so their parents. And this kind of stuff bothered her, but she said this is the day that is the last day that she talks to Alex Cox. She says that Alex is talking about Joseph Ryan, his sister, and the fact that Joseph Ryan might have abused kids, but she says he kind of flips back and forth on whether or not he does this. He mentions the fact that they wanted to bait Joseph Ryan or set him up, pick a fight, so they would have an excuse to kill him. In other words, self-defense. Very similar to another act that will happen later. Debbie says that Alex says this in a joking manner, but she just finds it very strange. Alex Cox even goes over the details of the taser attack. Debbie mentions the fact that she realizes that he is a comedian and that he does joke in a weird way. She says when he says these things, they're shocking. She has trouble figuring out if he's being funny or he means it. But what's interesting, as we will hear later on other accounts of what happens in this Joseph Ryan attack by Alex Cox, and we find out that Lori's good at giving everybody different stories. Here we are in 2012. It's the same old Lori that we know. Now, at one point, Debbie admits that she didn't think that he would kill him, but at the same time, she says he did tell her that he wanted to kill him. So it's really important you remember this, because in the future, a few years later, there's going to be a few other people accuse Alex of being very open about who he wants to attack or hurt. And it doesn't seem that she really grasps the idea that Alex Cox, this is a guy supposedly slept with a 15-year-old child, guys. This is not a good person. And he's just getting out of jail for attacking a guy. And so she says at this time, she's shocked that he even tased Joseph Ryan. She just couldn't see him doing that. And guys, think about it. Alex Cox can seem very sweet and sincere. And I'm sure if you were the one talking to him, you would have difficulties believing that a guy like this that will do anything for you could be your worst enemy with the snap of Lori's finger. You know, if you watch one of his comedy sketches, you will see where he actually is, and you can tell that he's most likely sincere about this. He's driving on the highway, and I can't remember the details, but he says he just wants to run her off the road. Alex Cox is a very confusing guy, because sometimes he does seem to have morals, or he seems to hold back from hurting people. But is that really what it is? But Debbie continues with the story, saying that Alex is really, really, really angry at Joseph Ryan because of the allegations Lori has sold to him, telling him that there's a custody dispute and that he's just given her all kinds of trouble about keeping the children, and that he's harming them. One question I have is Lori truly concerned about her children? Keep that in mind. Debbie says that she would start asking Alex more questions and try to dig deeper into, what's going on between Lori and Joseph Ryan, but Alex would mostly talk about the fact that they were trying to get custody of the children, which I've suspected this whole time that everything that Lori has said and done to Joseph Ryan is all made up. And again, she mentions that their story would flip-flop and teeter from one side to the other. Debbie says it's after this phone call that she decides that she doesn't want to be part of this kind of lifestyle, and she just completely cuts him off and never talks to him again. So you can see, it's been 3 months since Alex Cox has been out of jail. That's about the time that she says that he calls her, or they speak on the phone, whichever it is. So the drama between Lori and Joseph Ryan continues. Alex Cox has gotten out of jail. He still is pretty much got his mind on Joseph Ryan and what he can do to him. Kylie Ryan has been sick, and a lot of it has to do with her stomach. They can't figure out what it is half the time, and I've always wondered if Lori had a hand in that. Counselors believe that it's brought on because of the stress that she's going through, and they're starting to catch on that Lori is the biggest stress factor, yet she remains in the custody and care of Lori Vallow. I have to end it here, guys. Thank you so much to those who have subscribed, who have donated to my Patreon page to help this channel keep going. Life has been busy for me this year. There's a lot going on, so I'm really struggling to get these out. Thanks for being patient. Please don't forget about these faces. So many girls remain missing. Their stories forgotten. Love you guys. See you guys soon.